Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. So really quickly before we begin, today 2 stories, both with updates. Now let's move on to the first one. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user CListerDlister, following the court order. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided. I was also served with a protection order that stated I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids, etc. And it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. A relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order, but told me these things take time and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter. If there was any evidence otherwise, I'd be in an uphill battle if and when my wife renewed it. It only took 1 day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I had crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I watched them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me and I reminded her of the details of the order and that I wouldn't come until I had permission. This happened twice more that I waited down the street within the first week. So I told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away. I texted her to remind her. The very next day, she again didn't email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school since their school was only a few minutes from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick the kids up and then make it to their school and work. She called furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then wanted to write me a blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Follow the order. The culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. Her boyfriend was staying over but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work the next morning, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. The ex had to call a friend from work to pick up the kids and take them to school, and that's how the friend found out. Of course, it got out at their work, and within a week of that, the boyfriend was fired over their relationship and my ex was suspended. By this time, I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was the boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family, and the judge was quite harsh with her over it when we settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. Additional information from OP's comments. Honestly, I never would have left her if she'd not cheated and kicked me out. I'd be stuck in a terrible marriage. It genuinely sucked to have it happen, but from where I was to where I am, I'm grateful it did. Not being bitter is easy now because my life is pretty awesome. If it turned out differently, I may be resentful, but I feel like she did me a favor. Cheating did have huge consequences though. She thought she'd be living off me and I'd be poor paying support. The opposite happened. She's got strained relationships with the kids even though they don't know about the cheating. They all suspect it though. I'm not condoning cheating. My current wife was also cheated on. It's left us both with some serious scars, but life is much better than I ever imagined for me. I'm just a happy guy now. And my ex? Well, she's always been a grass is greener type of person. She was not an equal partner in our relationship and always pined for what we didn't have. While it took many years, she now works consistently and provides a home and stability for the kids when they're with her. She's grown, but I'm very grateful we're not together. Even for the kids, it wasn't a healthy home. My new wife is so different. We're partners through and through. We are both hardworking and quite successful. She actually makes way more money than me, lol. So we've got a good life materially. What's way more important is how we are together. She's a woman who builds me up and I build her up. We both put in the work to maintain a good relationship. We're both looking out for each other. I can't believe she even wanted to date me with 4 kids. And possibly the biggest one is that my wife celebrates who I am instead of belittling it. I'm on the spectrum, very mild, and live with ADHD. This can be challenging, but also one of the reasons I'm so successful in my field. Well, OP, you needed to follow the order, and you followed the order. Whatever happened after that, that's on them. And so now you're probably wondering, well, and where's the update, or what's that about? Well, this story is a little bit different. It's a 2-part story that started with that malicious compliance, and now we're gonna move on into the revenge territory. Remember how OP mentioned that the boyfriend was the one with the idea for the protection order? Well, let's move on to the next part of this story. But before that, I gotta show you this other playlist that has only stories with updates on them. So now, let's move on. So, as you know, a decade ago, my then wife, now ex-wife, began a relationship with a guy and kicked me out of my house. The boyfriend was instrumental in blindsiding me and planning on how to keep me away from my own kids. Ever since, I've kind of hated him. I've always been polite and respectful with him because he'd become my kid's stepdad, but I swore that if I ever had the chance to get back at him, I figured it would be something petty. But then he gift-wrapped my revenge and I've been running with it for a few weeks now. My kids are mostly grown now, some in university, some in grades 11 and 12. The uni kids live with me while the high school kids still go back and forth with their mom. I'm also remarried now. My wife and I each have our own vehicles, but my wife owns and insures a minivan for when we are all going somewhere together. The kids are free to use it too, as only one has a car. We only have one set of keys, so I put an AirTag on it in case the keys were lost. About 3 weeks ago, one of my older kids took the van out for the night but ended up staying at his mom's on the couch. Around 7 AM the next day, another kid asked to use the van. I pinged the AirTag only to find out it was hours away in an industrial section of another town. I was quite concerned about why my kid was out there. I called him up and he was at his mom's where he said he'd be. He had no idea the van was missing. I called the police and gave them the location of the van. Within 20 minutes they had stopped the van and the driver said he had permission to use it. Lo and behold, it's my ex-wife's boyfriend. The police weren't very interested in detaining him as it would be easier for him to just drive the van back to our town and we could sort it out here. However, it wasn't my van nor was he listed on the insurance to drive it. I asked that it be impounded. In Canada, we can't press charges, but I was adamant that this was theft and that I wasn't going to let it go. Since the guy was out of town with no ride, the police did end up detaining him probably because it was easier. I was given information for the yard where the van was impounded. Since we had the next day off, my wife and I drove out to the yard to pick it up. When we got there, I first checked for damage since it was sitting a little low. Nothing outside. When I checked inside, I found that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cables. Think seismic mitigation. Turns out, boyfriend used my wife's van to pick up stuff for work. My wife turns on her heels and walks to the office. I had to jog to keep up. Does she ask who has access to the van? They have the only set of keys, so my wife is assured only she or me. At this point, I get where she's going with this. I instruct them that no one accesses the van but us. I had $35 with me, so I gave it to them as a tip. They promised me that no one would get in there, and they actually moved the van into a secured area within the yard. Then we went home without the van. We weren't even home from the long drive when I got the first text from boyfriend about getting the equipment. I explained that we left the van as there were expenses we were not going to pay. Towing, impounding fees, daily storage. I told him that he'd have to pay for them before I pick up the van. He was super mad and swore he'll pay me back. I said, no way. Within an hour, I got a call from his boss. They needed the equipment as soon as possible for a time-sensitive job. I explained that it was impounded and that I won't have time to get it until next week now, and it has to be paid in advance. The boss swears up and down at me. I calmly explained that I didn't steal a vehicle to transport his stuff. Boss was having none of that, so I said I won't tolerate that abuse and hung up. Then I blocked him and his company on every platform I'm reachable on. And that was a few weeks ago. Since then, I've been able to make excuses every single time boyfriend tries to arrange to pick up the van. Often because the kids don't have the van, so I have to drive them. Boss has gotten through a few times using other numbers and sent a ton of emails that I ignore, but I did reply and explain that both my wife and I need about 4 hours to do the round trip, and that it needs to be paid for ahead of time. And it's added up. $25 a day for secure storage plus towing and impound fees, etc. Plus, I wanted to be paid for the fuel the boyfriend used as well as our travel. Boyfriend and I agreed on the standard 58 cents per kilometer, and so the boss e-transferred us for the total cost of our driving. By now the van has made one trip and our car is done too. It came to almost $600. So on Friday, it finally happened. My wife and I drove out and picked up the van. It was prepaid and ready to be released. I dropped off a dozen beers at the office when I picked up the keys and went to grab the van. However, I wasn't going to transport boss and boyfriend's stuff, so I arranged for it to be held at the yard at the same rate as a vehicle, unloaded it, and left right before it closed for the weekend. I got a call from boyfriend asking when he can come home with a work truck to get the stuff. I told him it was still at the impound almost 2 hours away and the office opens at Monday at 9 a.m. There was only silence on the other end, so I hung up after about 10 seconds. Through this, I've been getting vague updates from my ex, with who I've got a good relationship with now. She was livid with her boyfriend and was clear with me that any and all consequences were squarely on him. He's kept his job but is missing the next pay increase and is not getting his year-end bonus. Ex said they were too short-staffed to let him go, but he's in the doghouse at home and at work. No word on criminal charges for taking the van, but the Crown handles that, and I'm not suing in civil court. Wow, OP, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your whole story, a 10-year revenge, because he is a douche to you, so good on you. Thanks again for sharing, OP, and take care. And now, let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user Rainbow62993. Am I the a-hole for refusing to make dinner for my husband and brother-in-law unless the dishes are washed? My husband, 28 male, and I, 29 female, recently allowed his brother, 27 male, to move in with us. We all work full-time and the same hours Monday through Friday with an occasional Saturday. I'm self-employed, so I'm able to make my hours flexible if needed, which I do on Tuesdays to do my and my husband's laundry early in the morning before I go to work, and Wednesdays to do our towels and his brother's laundry. We do not own a washer and dryer at home, so I take our laundry to do elsewhere on those days, which I honestly do not mind at all. Note that his brother is paying $100 a week, and I told him that that would include me doing his laundry weekly. I do all the stopping at grocery stores on my own before picking them up from work, which also cuts into my work days. We currently only have one vehicle and his brother's car is down, so I'm the main transportation for everyone. At home, I clean up after our dog of any bathroom messes he's made during the day while we're away and fix his food. I also ensure all the common spaces are neat and tidy. When I cook dinner, I am the only one who cooks, I want the sink to be empty. When I cook, I ensure that the kitchen is properly cleaned and I ensure all the pots and pans, utensils and plates and bowls are rinsed with no residue left behind for easy cleaning for the next person. Now, I've recently started getting complaints that 1. They're tired of doing the dishes all the time, and 2. I complain too much. The biggest complaints from me are wanting the dishes done and the clothes to be placed properly into the hamper. I feel like I put a lot of effort into everything I contribute to the home. The only tasks I ask from them are for clothes to be picked up off the floor and then put away immediately once they're cleaned, and then for dishes to be done before I make dinner. I will quickly note that we'll usually choose one day on the weekend that we all pick a room to tackle to deep clean, but outside of that particular day, the load of the house is left to me. I told them both yesterday that I will no longer complain about dishes being done or not. I will continue to lay something out for dinner, but if the dishes are not completed, I won't be cooking. They also know which days I do laundry, and if things aren't properly placed in the hamper when I'm ready to leave for laundry, those items won't be washed until the following week. I've been told that this is a harsh approach. However, as I stated before, I feel as though I contribute a lot to our household and I don't feel like I'm asking much for these tasks to be completed by them. They're tired of hearing me complain about things not being done, and I'm tired of having to complain about these things not being done. However, maybe this is a harsh approach and makes me an a-hole. Should I just start doing the dishes myself and ensuring everything is placed correctly in the hamper for wash days to keep the home running smoothly? No, OP, what are you doing? No. First of all, you're not the a-hole to your husband and his brother, but you are an a-hole to yourself. You went from what I would think is a marriage to now being the mom of two entitled, whiny, messy kids? I mean, seriously, OP, you're cooking, you're doing everything except that one in a week deep clean thing, but you're doing everything else. They're not even doing the dishes. They're not even keeping their clothes in a hamper. I mean, come on, how hard is that to do? OP, I would definitely change that home dynamic between what you are now, which is mom of two messy kids, to a marriage and a guest. You sound really nice, OP, and it sounds also like they're taking advantage of you. That has to stop. You need to sit down with your husband and help him get his head out of his ass. He's a husband, he's not a child anymore, and he's not living with mommy. And he needs to talk to his brother. And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What is your judgment, or what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Tataz says, you're the a-hole to yourself. You work and you do the majority of the housework. I'm surprised you didn't add dirty dishes equals no food. Seems a very basic rule. Also, there is no reason for you to drive them around. There are Ubers, public transportation, and I assume mama's boys have a full set of legs too. Walking is good for their health. As a harsh approach would be to kick them both out. What you are doing is just expecting them to be minimally functional adults. Snoo Sprouts 6712 says, not the a-hole times 100. It honestly sounds as if they are expecting you to do for them as their mother did when they were toddlers. I'd go on strike. If that didn't do the trick, I'd be looking for somewhere else to live. Oh, and your harsh demands are entirely reasonable. They should consider themselves lucky to be receiving that degree of service in this day and age. Do you see what I did there? I wrote service. Is this the way you want to go forward, being like a domestic servant? Derkster says, not the a-hole. You're already doing the bulk of the work. It sounds like they want you to be a full-on maid for them. Your solution is perfectly reasonable. If clothes don't make it into the hamper, they don't get washed. If dishes aren't clean so you can cook with them, you don't make dinner. It's weird to me that they are complaining about doing these things. Dishes are generally an easy chore. Making sure dirty clothes make it into the hamper is laughably easy. Well, the community definitely agrees that OP is not the a-hole and that the husband and the brother are being very entitled in their behavior. So now, let's move on to the update to see what OP ended up doing and how the story ends. I want to start off by saying that I'm grateful that I posted my situation. It honestly opened my eyes about how much I've been allowing people to take advantage of me so easily for far too long. And I mean that in terms of a lot of people throughout my life, not just this situation in particular. As awful as it sounds, I truly believed I was going to be the a-hole in the situation when I posted it. Yet, it wasn't the response I received at all. For that, I want to thank everyone who took the time to reply to my post. You helped in opening my eyes to the boundaries I needed to create in my life going forward. The day I posted it, I decided to put my foot down with not cooking dinner unless the dishes were done and not washing laundry that wasn't properly placed in the hamper on laundry day, and I stuck with it. To my surprise, things began running smoothly. Though things were seemingly running smoothly again, my husband and I were beginning to miss our own privacy and space. My husband and brother-in-law were beginning to not get along, and we realized he was doing nothing to save money to move when his living with us was supposed to be temporary. So we decided we were going to give him a date to move out by. The day we were going to give him the date, I woke up to a status brother-in-law had posted on Facebook stating that the last 3 months had been filled with depression and starvation and it had caused him to lose a great amount of weight, which I was taken aback by and honestly hurt. I have spent a lot of time making new and elaborate recipes. My husband and I still cannot figure out what prompted him to post it in the first place. So I not only confronted him about it by commenting on his post, but in person as well. I asked him, "So you're starving?" Where he looked me straight in the face and said, "Yes." I honestly couldn't have been more dumbfounded. There were a lot of words exchanged, mostly by me, and my husband told him it was best to keep his mouth shut. I suppose now would be a good time to note that brother-in-law is known for his pathological lying, though I'm unsure how anyone can lie to someone who's literally been cooking their meals on almost a nightly basis. When I dropped them off at work that morning, my husband told him he had a week to move out, but brother-in-law ultimately decided to move out that night when they returned home from work. I was honestly hoping to give a 100% perfect and peaceful update, though I suppose in hindsight, it is. We now have our home, privacy, and peace of mind back. Our home is running more smoothly than ever, and my husband and I can continue on our path of happily ever after. Well, OP, congratulations on standing up for yourself and starting to set boundaries, and good that your husband came around too. In my opinion, this is definitely a happy update. Thank you so much for sharing, OP, and all the best in the future. Take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.